As above, so below.
Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Bernard Beitman, MD, and I've written a book called Meaningful Coincidences, and it just struck me recently that if you're anywhere an academic interested in meaningful coincidence synchronicity, this is a book you ought to get too. But it's really a guideline for people out there like you who want to get a better conceptualization of what synchronicity and serendipity are, as well as a couple of other things. It organizes the field in a way that's practical and pragmatic and that you can use. So please go out and buy it. I think you're going to find something useful in there for use somewhere in there. I also recommend that you go to the coincidenceproject.net. That's all one word, .net, the Coincidence Project, and come to our Coincidence Cafe, which I hope our guest Tom will show up at, where we tell each other coincidence stories. And there's a lot of us out there who just want to find other people to tell our stories to, and I get a lot of them, but this is a good place to send you if you want to tell and hear people's coincidence stories. So here's one that will be interesting to our friend Tom, who is our guest today. We've had a couple of conversations. He's a great guy, and he's as you'll see, a researcher in synchronicity in a way that's not particularly conventional. This story is, I'm going to read it as I got it in the first person, and it's from a fellow called Philip Mary, who Tom knows. And they're both kind of in the same business, which is kind of helping leadership and organizations use synchronicity as part of their operation. So this is what Philip Mary wrote to me. I was inspired and moved by Bernie's talk with Dr. Lisa Miller, who's a psychologist in New York, who, by chance, also Tom knows very well because he works with her, and where the whole episode that Lisa and I talked about was devoted to her quest to become pregnant. The story resounded strongly and filled my consciousness. The following day, I was presenting my 9 keys of synchronicity to a large U.S. facilitators network. After 1 hour presentation to the main public group, I was asked to stick around to share with the senior executive of the organization, which was an intimate sharing of ideas and questions. This was a Zoom call, and I was intuitively drawn to a couple who had lovingly had their arms around each other and asked if they had any questions. He did asked. I was knocked over when they said, "It's probably an unusual question, but we are trying to get pregnant, and we wondered if you know if synchronicity has anything to help us." Wow. So here, 24 hours after he listens to Lisa Miller and I talking about her pregnancy and the road she went through, pretty amazing to get pregnant, it really stayed with him. And here, 24 hours later, I was given the opportunity to help this couple. I contacted Dr. Miller. She said she was happy to help the couple in their quest to get pregnant, and I was happy to connect them. The final twist was that the woman in this story knew Dr. Miller, not because of her work, and used it in her own work. Thanks, Bernie. You never know who are we going to help in this wonderful world of synchronicity. I mean, this web that Philip Mary just described, which I'm not going to try to repeat, is out there, and we don't often get to see it happening. And here's a story of it happening. And Tom is a web guy, as I think we'll hear out. So Tom is a synchronicity activator. His company is called TriSync Impact. TriSync, and there's a reason for that in the sync you'll hear about. He helps individuals and teams realize greater synchronicity opportunities, utilizing positive psychology and strengths approach, not the negative stuff, with online courses, podcasts, and custom consultations. Tom is currently serving as the interim operations director for Reef Renewal, a nonprofit organization that grows endangered coral in underwater nurseries and outplants them on coral reefs throughout the Florida Keys. It's an important part of our ecological repair that we need to be able to be doing in this time of global warming. Tom lives in Jericho, Vermont, with his wife, Julie, and they have two grown sons with whom Tom just celebrated his birthday in Washington, D.C. So, Tom Myers, welcome to Connecting with Coincidence.
Thank you, Dr. Beitman. It's wonderful to be here and pleasure to talk more about synchronicity. Of course, we love to talk at any chance we get.
Well, you got into it, and you are into it, and you've had a bunch yourself. What'd you think of this Philip Mary number?
Great, perfect. Well, as you know, we talked about it earlier. Philip and I are in the same PhD program, and we happened to meet at Swarthmore College, which is where you attended as well. And so it's really fun to follow Philip, who's in Singapore, but follow all of his work in synchronicity, and specifically love his ideas of how you use synchronicity specifically for greater leadership abilities in terms of personal and more productive ways too. So it's really, really cool stuff.
And I like that I got this thing a day or two ago before we started interviewing, because it just makes the web better. And of course, I love hearing Swarthmore College. I had a great time playing football there, among other things. Yeah. Why don't you tell, you've got a great coincidence story that was fundamental to your personal life and allowed you to go to DC to have a birthday party with your two kids. So tell us about that coincidence.
Yeah, it's funny. Thank you. I kind of attribute synchronicity and kind of all of life effectively of a interconnecting web, as we talk about, and how everything is connected. But I like to attribute these meaningful coincidences and synchronicity to my own existence. And I think early on as a kid, I always had a sense of synchronicity, of these strange feelings of this interconnected piece. And, again, is it happen chance, or was it just a random event? So that's kind of what started to be down this track of, I want to know more. Like, I love this stuff and I want to know more about it. And how can I help others to enhance and tap into this whole world of a interconnected ability throughout. So I like to talk about the story that kind of it starts in the middle, and then it goes to the beginning, and then fast forwards to to just a couple of years ago. So starting out back when I was younger and my early days out of college, I was a ski racing coach. And in the summer times, we would train on the glaciers. And at this particular point, we were training on the glaciers in Switzerland. And as all coaches get together, and we're having our racers ski up down the hill, setting courses and stuff, and we kind of collaborate. So I started riding up the T-bar with one other coach, and we got to be good buddies. Again, you see him every day for a week or so. So we're talking a lot. And we're talking about parents and where you're from and that sort of thing. And lo and behold, he said, well, my dad was killed in an accident in 1969. And I said, oh, that's really too bad. Yeah, it was a freak accident. It was a glider, a sailplane. And I thought, wow, that's pretty bizarre, because my father had a very close ski buddy who was also killed in a glider accident. And it happened in Vermont. So we were in Switzerland. He's talking about his father who was killed in Vermont, where I was living in the same town. And I'm thinking, boy, this is sounding really, really familiar, because I know my dad had a buddy who was killed, right? So I said, I think I know this story. I think I know exactly what happened. And I think it's my dad and your dad were very close ski buddies. So sure enough, that is exactly what transpired is my dad and his father were close ski buddies in upstate New York. And so I thought it's pretty ironic, myself as a skier, my dad a skier, and his buddy and my new friend. So sure enough, this is exactly what happened. And I almost think I kind of filled in some more of the blanks of what this young guy, his dad, how he died. I had specific understanding of how the accident happened. So let's fast forward now to 2021. And my dad sent me a whole box of the old slides, 35 millimeter film slides. And so I thought, well, I have some time during the pandemic. Why don't I digitize them? So I digitized them and put them up again on the computer. And he came to visit Vermont, and I showed him these slides, and he said, "Oh my gosh, there's my buddy. He was killed in a glider accident." And I said, "Yeah, I know that. I know that story." He goes, "Yeah, and he was the guy who introduced me to your mother." So my mom came from a ski trip from upstate New York, or from Rochester area, with a bunch of girlfriends to go skiing, and they were staying at his ski lodge. And so they said, "Oh, these young ladies, and let me introduce you to, my father." So it goes right to the existence of how I came about. It was because of this guy who introduced my parents. They got married, and against a couple of years later, I was born. But it's just interesting to show it can continually go throughout time, and synchronicity and these connections are never ending, and they're infinite. So started in early 1961 and goes to 2021. It will continue. Who knows what the next chapter will unearth. So that's kind of a fun story.
So you're riding around in Switzerland with a guy that you pick up a conversation with, and his father had introduced your father to your mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of there's fun thinking about you riding down a glacier with this guy, and that's all very dramatic. But the basic idea was, in a faraway country, you find out how your parents met, and that's through this guy's father.
Yeah,
and that's a good one. And of course, you have more of them. You experience coincidences quite a bit, and that's one of the interesting parts of all this. There are people who do experience lots of coincidences, and there are people who just kind of have one or two, and that's all they can kind of pay attention to. And part of what your job is, almost in life, not uncommon, not unlike mine. By the time this is published, I will have given a talk on how to increase or cultivate synchronicities. And you're into that too. You're trying to be able to help people, particularly, I think, in organizations, do something about recognizing the value of coincidences in their work. And I wonder if you could tell us some of what you think helps people become aware of meaningful coincidences.
Yeah, I think it's having a mindset, and I think you and I, Bernie, probably witness this everywhere around us. I mean, it's all around us. So I think when you understand this concept of an interlinking field, or the psychospheres that you talk about as well, is that in the world everything is connected in some way, shape, or form. And so my particular work is, how do we help people to tap into and have a better understanding of this interconnectability, and how might that pertain specifically to that individual?
Yeah, I think what's unique about your way of thinking, and it's particularly compared to mine, and what other people have, they usually start with the synchronicity itself. They're, oh man, look at this. But what you start with was the fundamental knowledge of the interconnectedness of all things, and you're trying to be able to show people how they are interconnected with some parts of this. I'll call it a worldwide web of synchronicity, or of connections that are illuminated by meaningful coincidences. As you probably know, the vision of the Coincidence Project is to illuminate the invisible currents that connect and unify us. So we make that assumption as well, but you have the picture already. That you have, it's all interconnected. Now I just have to see how it's interconnected. And that's a little past the vision I've had. Now you're getting me to be able to believe what I already know, which by believe it, I mean actually visualize it. And when you visualize, everything is interconnected. And a lot of people say that, and that's not enough anymore. It's how they're connected, and in what places they're connected. That's what seems to be important. So how do you imagine this worldwide web of interconnectedness illuminated through meaningful coincidences?
Yeah, and I think in fact, I'm going to plug you because some of the work you did in your first book, Bernie, I used in my dissertation to write about synchronicity, and I love one of the lines you have is like, we don't have to understand it specifically. I think you use the analogy of turning on the light switch. We know electricity works. Just turn it on. You have faith it works. I think with synchronicity and this interconnectedness, it's like, yeah, we don't really. Yeah, if you want to be a physical scientist or natural scientist or a social scientist, you can delve into the specifics of the theory and the quantum physics and all the other pieces that are part of that energy field of matter and energy. But I think for our conversations and for what I really get excited about is for people just to understand that it is out there, and I think there is that interconnected ability out there, and I. Again, come from where we live in a world where there is a benevolent higher power, and again, we can talk about how that is defined. Be it God, for me personally, it's God, but it could be a higher self, a higher power, your higher self, Mother Nature, the Akashic field, however it might be. But to know that you live in a world that there is the connectedness and that you are cared for and that is a benevolent opportunity out there for you. So, and what we fully, completely understand is we as human beings, we have our own ways of showing up in the world. We have our own, obviously, unique genetic makeup on the physical side. And on the mental side, what might be appealing to you, Bernie, may not be for me, or what might be of interest to you may or may not be for me. So to understand that we are all unique beings and we interact in a world with our own unique strengths. So what I get excited about is how do we help people understand your personality of who you are and your makeup there, as well as what are the strengths that you bring forth? What talents, strengths, skills, as we kind of say, the native genius, which I love that word. What are you imbued with as a strength? How do you use your personality and who you are, be it in many different types of measurements or typing of a personality, with your native genius strengths, coupling those to create purpose. And what is your purpose and what are you here to do? Taking, again, your strengths, your purpose, and now putting this into the world of synchronicity, and what resources and opportunities are going to come to you. You're going to be more aware of that are going to help put you on that path that will fulfill a meaning, purposeful life, and for not only for yourself, and more importantly, for others in the community.
That's too. And do it for others is so important. But I have a question. But native genius combined with what?
I would say the strengths, the things that light you up, that get you excited. We talked about there are things that you and I and everyone in the world can do where we've learned to be competent and learn to be have this as a competency, right? To be able to do that. We don't enjoy it, right? I for organizations, I do a lot of note taking and writing. I don't enjoy doing it, but it is important, and I'm good at doing it. So I like to think about what are the things that bring you joy, that create your intrinsic motivation and strengths that come together, that kind of can create this native genius of what naturally comes to you, and you get excited when you do that.
Okay, so it's strengths plus passion is,
Yeah.
I think, what you're talking about is native genius.
Yeah. I would say that's a perfect way to do it. Of your strengths, say simply strengths, what passion, what excites you, what lights you up is that kind of native genius piece.
Okay. And one of the things that Philip Mary emphasizes is a way to increase meaningful coincidences is to be of service.
Mm.
Now, I kind of like the idea of that, but I'm not sure. I don't know that. I mean, I kind of know that from the Coincidence Project, because the more I do this stuff, the more stuff seems to happen. Like I've been wanting to I don't know. I want to talk with a group, with Andrew Weil's group of integrative medicine fellowship people about synchronicity, to kind of get it into medicine a bit, but I don't have a lot of examples from medicine. I have some psychiatry examples. And so I'm saying, okay, I made a proposal. What's going to happen? So some otolaryngologist emails me yesterday and says, I've got a lot of coincidence with some of my patients. And I was, oh, okay. So tell me some of them, please, or write them down, because I need some of those. I haven't heard back from them yet, but that's the kind of thing that is really fun in doing this, where if I'm being of service, yes, it's a lot of fun. So it's kind of strengths plus passion is what I'm doing. And that seems to have something to do with what Philip's talking about, that being of service helps you have more coincidences. What do you think of that?
I think that's right on. And again, all the strengths and the experience and your research that you have done has brought you to a place with, how can you take this information and how can you take this power that you have? And again, you're not going to hold it inside. I mean, what you want, with your Coincidence Project and sharing, it's how do you share this knowledge with other people so they can then say, you know what? Oh, that reminds me. What Bernie just said about this, that is exactly what's happening. So you're imparting and you're passing on the knowledge that you have that is in effect helping people. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. The energy that you get when you do help others. I created a course a couple of years ago, and the name of the course was Purpose, Meaning, and Happiness. And it was launched at the height of a worldwide pandemic. So, and if you can teach a class like that at a time when, it's a worldwide tragic event of just, again, the pandemic, with so much uncertainty and so much death that occurred, and the scary factor. So I think what was interesting for young people to understand was that, if we think about happiness and I'm going to do whatever it takes to be happy, I'm going to make myself happy, damn it. Well, that can work, again, very hedonistically. That can work for a short term. After a while, it's just going to be like, okay, what's my next thing? When students realize that doing service and helping others in any way that they can, given their own strengths and interests, that in turn, the byproduct, I think Eleanor Roosevelt said, the byproduct of doing for others, the byproduct is happiness. Then in turn, they feel more fulfilled and happy given the satisfaction of helping others. So I think Philip Mary is right on when it's like, as part of synchronicity and leadership is a service to others as well.
What I'm asking is more specific than that, because I think there is a gratification from helping people. And by the way, I've recently gotten to a place where I've had enough of helping people. I've gotten drained from helping people. It's been something that I've done almost compulsively to help people, partly because it was fun to do it and great to see it happening. But I've overdone it recently, and I've had to pull back. So I want to be able to make sure we know there's a bell-shaped curve here, that it's good for a while, maybe, but you can like so many other things on this planet Earth, this polarity place, you can overdo this helping business. And I'm taking a rest from some of that. I'm really trying to be able to do it right now. But meanwhile, my question for you still is Philip Mary's contention that, yes, it brings you happiness usually to help people. But he's saying that a part of his 9 keys of synchronicity is that then brings more synchronicities to you. And please comment on that.
Yeah. So I think it's when you're more aware of this happening to you, and when you are connecting more with so many other people, places, things, that the more that you're engaging, the more experience of synchronicity will come back to you. And I think that's a key piece.
Now, I want to hear more about that, but what you just said is a basic principle of creating meaningful coincidences. You got to cross patterns. The more of them, the more things you run across, people, things, places, the more you're going to have. I mean, that's just basic. Sitting in your house looking at the ceiling is less likely to create some synchronicities. You got to have a coincidence is the coming together of 2 events that are you can't quite explain how they come together, but they got to come together. So the more you run around, the more you're going to have intersections with other people. That's a basic principle, not very well articulated. I keep trying to say it, but that's what you implied. But I'm asking more than that, so that you increase coincidences by having helpful interactions with people. But I think there's something more that he's implied, that there's a greater meaning, rather there's something more. I can't really put my words on it right.
Yeah, but I think it's exactly right. The more opportunities that you create for yourself and create for others, the more engaging you are with the external world, the more that you're going to be connecting and creating more synchronicity or coincidence moments. So a couple of things I'll refer to. Number one is a research by the name of Dr. Richard Wiseman, and you may have heard of him. And he's
I'm not lucky like him. He's
you got
a wise man who's talking about it's all luck. I mean,
yeah.
I love playing with names, and he's a wise guy when it comes to some of this synchronicity business, because he doesn't believe it. It's all something else. But go ahead.
Yeah. So his work is, just as you said, is understanding why are there people out there or that are luckier than others. So his research it's called the luck factor, but he looks at why do some people disclose themselves as being luckier than others. So again, exhaustive research from people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, 18 to 80 years old. So he wanted to know, why do some people say they are luckier than others? And many of the people that he interviewed had, devastating, tragic lives, with loss of, with death and illness, but they still said they are a lucky person. And so, but the 4 main tenets, and just exactly what you said, Bernie, at the outset, is that the 4 pieces of this are increased chance opportunities. So the more people you're out there, just again, for connecting coincidences, the more people you talk to, the more things you engage in, the more activities that you put yourself out there, statistically, in probability, it's going to come back as more successful, right? the more chances you put yourself out there, the more raffle tickets you buy if you do that. But the more resumes you send out for a job, statistically, it's going to come back as being more positive than not. The other three, secondly, is and we won't go into it, but it has a lot to do with the synchronicity piece. But going into every situation, expecting a positive affirmation, going into a situation, it's going to work out. This is going to be, this is going to work out, so you can predispose yourself to situations if you have an attitude and a positive outlook that things are going to be good. This is going to be a great meeting or great podcast. I'm so excited about it. You can kind of create that energy that will be fulfilled and manifest. Thirdly, is if things don't work out, if things don't come out as you expected, you're not going to look at that as a failure. You're going to look at it as a learning experience. So it's kind of that adage of making lemonade out of lemons. And I love the work from Martin Seligman of learned optimism, of the 3 Ps of pessimism, but permanence, pervasiveness, and personal. So why is it happening to me? Why does this always happen to me? Every time I try something, it doesn't work out. So you're kind of using those 3 Ps. So what Wiseman is saying about luck is like, yeah, this didn't work out. It was tragic. It didn't work out. And in time, you can take it as, over time, what did you learn from it, and how might you move on from that? So finally, and I love this last point, he asserts of go with your gut. And this is a lot of the synchronicity, a lot of the coincidence pieces is like what feels right. You get a sense, and again, the physiological connections of the brain and the nervous system, you get that uneasy feeling in your stomach. You get that uneasy, nervous feeling. This just doesn't feel right. I gotta literally trust my gut. Conversely, things feel great. You have this energy. Logically, this is a step I'm going to take for, let's say, a new job. I don't know. It may not be making as much money. It may be a little bit more, but I have this feeling and this intuitive sense that this is the right path to take, and I'm just going to trust that. So those are the kind of the 4 tenets of the luck factor, but you can take that and layer it into so many areas of coincidences and synchronicity.
Yes, you can. And the first one I'll paraphrase as the dog that trots about finds a bone. You got to keep moving. The second one with the optimism, in addition to how you were saying this, optimism allows you to believe there's going to be a way out. There's going to be something here that's going to be useful for you. It's got to be. It's. You just believe that when you don't. It's like his experiment with the people in the coffee shop, where they put like a 20-pound note on the floor, and those who thought they weren't lucky didn't notice it, and those who thought they were lucky were looking around for something. And not only that, but they found some businessman to consult with who was sitting there ready to talk with them about their future business plans. The people who thought they were lucky knew there was something going to be there that might be useful to them, and they were looking around for that. The idea that you can keep that. What were the other two? I've just blocked because I like that story.
Yeah. So if things don't work out, so
again, the resilience
yeah.
one. If things don't work out, the only failure is not learning from failure is another one that I've used pretty easily. But that resilience thing, you've got like getting sick, like some relationship not working out. If you step back and appreciate it as something that is a potential learner for you, that's very, very important part of managing. And what was the fourth one?
Going with your gut, the intuitive sense.
That one is such a wide open thing. I've rarely liked going with my gut as a phrase, because I don't. I use my gut, and as you say, there's a lot of an enteric nervous system there in our intestines that maybe as complicated in some ways as what's going on in our brains. And there's a good connection between the two of them. So there is something to the feeling you get, but there are other feelings too that are part of intuition, which includes your heart giving you some kind of information that is the heart knows what the mind can't figure out, or something like that. The heart has methods and reasons that the rationality doesn't know. And then coming into one's mind, sometimes there are voices or other little thoughts that seem to come, like that still quiet voice that says something to you too. So this focus on the gut is a little too concrete in a way that focuses on the body. It's the body, it's the heart, and the mind. Each have sources that you can tune into for intuitive information. So I just spread that part out of what Weissman's talking about. But as you say, this is like really good advice for synchronicity.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you go into an organization and you say, okay, boys, let's have some fun and find some meaningful coincidences here. You walk in there with a concept of interrelationships that they don't see. That's what I'm liking about looking at your mind, Tom, because I haven't seen a mind operate like this. I have it intuitively, but I don't have the picture. You've got the picture. You've got it. There's a web in here somewhere. And you, Tom Myers, are going to walk in there and you're going to find ways to help people find those interconnections. And that's your optimistic vision of what's going to happen in there.
Yeah, I love the fact that you walk into a room with a team, and once you start to kind of set the intention of, okay, what's the accomplishment? I come from a business background. Okay, we have goals, we have to fulfill those. There's many ways to maybe get to that goal, but oftentimes we undervalue what each individual brings with experience and connections and passions and interests and strengths. So when we're able to aggregate that together, think of the power that of what that can create for a common purpose. And oftentimes working with folks and working with teams, you've done brainstorming sessions, right? Where we're sitting there and we're like, hey, we got to throw out as many ideas as we can to solve this problem. Me, who is, from a personality standpoint, is an extrovert. I love getting energy from other people. There are others on my team who are more, have that introverted side where they need to get their energy from within, and they need time to really compress this information and be able to understand and have an ability to offer a lot. So if you create more time in these brainstorming sessions, or have time to reflect and then come back and say, oh my gosh, I just realized synchronicity that my brother-in-law or my sister or whatever does something here that we need. All of a sudden, these connections can start to manifest and kind of be brought forth. But it really starts with the individual, then goes to a team.
The introvert extrovert one is very important for me in the Coincidence Project board, because we have two pretty prominent introverts, and it's sometimes necessary to call on them to see what's going on with them, because they have trouble pushing their ideas out there, as well as letting them marinate in their own minds. But that introvert thing prevents them from getting it out there too.
Yeah, and I spent, as you know, I spent 20 years as a professor. And so being in the classroom and understanding there's many different types of learners and people take in information different ways. And so to allow time when we're in a class discussion, or we're going over a case study, or we're discussing this or that, to allow time, not only time in the classroom, but then other outlets for students to be able to say, yeah, I wasn't able to voice my opinion in the class, but I can go online or I can type and I can write. It gives me more more opportunity to express myself. So often I've heard, and this is probably a good thing to think about when in teams, that so often things will popcorn around, right? All these ideas popcorn around, and someone who is has more of an introversion side, where they're thinking very deeply, and what they are going to say is going to be exactly what they're thinking in their head. By the time they're going to say it, it's moved on to another topic, and they're like,
Oops.
I didn't get a chance to. So, great from leadership, and great, in terms of being a teacher as well, to understand that you have to give space and time for people to express their self, because there are different ways that people do that. To synchronicity, how might, people tap into synchronicity from someone who is extroverted or someone who may be more introverted? There are different ways that might work for that individual, but it's understanding what will work better than.
Could you go in that a little bit more? Because you're a group facilitator, and you are talking about being able to use synchronicity for both extroverts and introverts, as well as the extra introvert people some people who are both. So how do you, especially when the introvert's thinking and then the subject moves on to something else, how do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a time when, again, a student or in a group, you have extra or allow for reflection. So, okay, we've done this brainstorming session, or we've worked on this new design of a new program or a product. Now let's give folks time, and not a 15-minute break, go out of the conference room and get a cup of coffee, but allow more time, even 24 hours, to come back and say, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've had an opportunity to create even a better understanding, and now a better solution. So now we bring that back together, and there's a much more enriched and much more powerful level of information that people are able to bring back.
Yeah, and as you talk about this, I'm still vague about the synchronicities that occur when you do this work. Some examples. You said, okay, and my brother-in-law can probably find his uncle who can do this kind of thing. I hadn't thought of it before. I don't know if that's a synchronicity or not. It's just thinking about a problem and being able to look in your mind to see in your memory about where a solution might be. But do you call that a synchronicity?
Yeah, and there could be, let's say, if in a meeting where you're designing a solution, there could be a common topic or a common focus that may resound differently to different people. So there might be resources, again, from a synchronistic standpoint, of able to connect with broader range of resources. Again, the brother-in-law, sister-in-law, what have you. But there may also be, what's kind of interesting is what resources, again, from an acausal using Jungian definitions of not a cause and effect, but what might come, as we say, from a synchronistic opportunity, that the group hadn't developed. That it has come. There's more resources that start to come once you start to get on that track and think about this focus. Then all of a sudden, there's these other pieces that start to come into play.
That's what I'm talking about. Like this otolaryngologist that contacted me. I mean, I can explain it kind of maybe because he's heard about me, but that he contacted me at a time when I needed that. That's more what I think about as synchronicity. Yeah. Is that what you're now talking about?
Yeah. So it could be from, hey, we got a resource here, my brother-in-law, but having more time, and then as we're kind of pondering or thinking about this direction, then the resources will start to come from the outside that's going to help move that project forward that you hadn't thought about in the meeting. You hadn't thought about it, but you've given some time. Now I can see where there's some pieces that are coming in to help support us.
Well, that's the fun part of it. I mean, and there was another one, I won't go into the details, where somebody dropped away, and then 2 days later I get an email, hey, I can do what you just lost, without knowing that's what and more, and more easily than the first one can. Those are the ones that I'll call synchronicity, where there's a need and it comes in a way that appears difficult to create an explanation. Where thinking of the brother-in-law, you see how that worked. It's an association thing, but those are the ones. So when you're thinking about webs, and that sort of thing happens, as happened with me, I just explained, and you are see them also. How do you conceptualize what's going on there?
Yeah, I think, from a very simplistic, base level of knowing that everything is connected, and having, again, for me personally, what works for me is, again, from a spiritual approach of believing that there is a higher power, a God, that does have, for me and my life, a benevolent focus and wants the best for me in helping and doing service with others. That's my outlet. So yeah, we can sit there and be in this terrible, anxious, depressive state. Like, how is this ever going to work out? If I think to myself, I'm going to figure it out myself, I'm going to make it happen, I'm going to go out and make that effort. Only me. I'm the only one in control. When you start to think that way, well, then you're going to be hitting some pretty quick roadblocks. But again, you kind of get into that state that, yes, there is a force out there. There is a benevolent, kind force that wants the best. I have to give in. I'm just going to let what's going to happen. I'm going to let that happen. I'm not going to sit at home, like you said earlier, Bernie, and just things are going to happen to me without any effort. It's a dynamic approach of I have the emotional feeling. I know this is a purpose that I want to fulfill. Things are going to come to me when I need them at the right time. I think that is, again, a lot of the work that we're doing now with higher education and spirituality with Lisa Miller's group. Again, the work that she's doing is, again, the spiritual piece of countering and helping folks to give some sense of greater agency and to know you're not alone and to know that it's not all on you to figure this out. And then I think you can look at the levels of depression and anxiety and how the brain, as Lisa has talked about, the neurophysical pieces of the brain and what is happening and what is firing when people have a spiritual approach. So I think that linkage with the synchronicity is really important.
I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. There's something about belief in something higher that makes people happier. It's a way. Some people call that getting high, but that's not usually what they're what that phrase means. But it has a similar effect, and it makes you more optimistic. It makes you believe you're not alone, that you're going to get help from someplace, and it gives me anyway a smile when it happens. Is like, what? That's really cool. That came out of nowhere, and and there it is, and I really appreciate it. So it makes you grateful. All that stuff is increasing a life experience. It makes life a little more worth living, or somewhat more worth living. And there's research out of Israel that says synchronicity awareness increases life satisfaction. So we got the data for what you're talking about now. And really fancy statistical work, but they suggest the same thing. But the fun thing about you for me, I mean, I used to think that Jung was the theoretician and I'm the pragmatician. That's what I used to think. Talking to you, I'm the theoretician now, because I like to figure out how this stuff happens. And you're saying turn on the light, get happy, talk to each other, give yourself time to reflect, believe there's something out there to help you, and it does, and you'll feel better, and you'll be able to take care of business more efficiently and with more fun.
You put it so succinctly. I mean, you're so good at being able to take all my words and put it into 3 or 4 sentences.
Well, thanks. I very much appreciate your saying that. I can do that sometimes, and I'm like saying, but Tom, there's this psychosphere out there that you're tapping into, and that there's an image you have of it. I can see it even if you can't clearly describe it. I know when you walk into an organization, you're seeing there's a web of interrelationships that you're trying to illuminate when you're in there, and that you want to be able to open up that web of that organization to let new stuff come in. And you can do that really well when you start getting the group to feel coherent, to feel part of the one part of something that they're all being purposeful about. So the application of these ideas to an individual becomes an application to the group. The spiritual and the psychological evolution help the group, and that's where I'm getting to too. So this is exciting for me to tune into your mind, and even though you're not articulating the way I might, I can still see it, that you have this web in mind, and you're facilitating people's awareness of it and then useful use of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm really, again, I can be a little verbose and kind of go wander through, but I think, in fact, it was just this morning, I was thinking about really is 3 pillars of the work that
Yes,
I'm doing.
please go through those.
Yeah. So it's in how these 3 pillars connect. Number 1 is ourself. Again, what are the strengths and our personality strength? Who are we? What works for us? When I wake up in the morning, who am I naturally to be? Second is understanding, okay, I've got these great strengths. What am I going to do with it? I have to have a purpose. What is my purpose and meaning in life? And again, this is interesting because sometimes that can be an overpowering statement. And sometimes you may not know, well, I don't know what my purpose is. I really don't know what my passions. And I like to think, well, this can change. Again, you can go through different chapters of your lives, but for right now, my purpose is to ... This is who I am and what I'll do. So I'm going to take my strengths. I'm going to take the purpose. Now I'm going to bring this into this world of synchronicity, this world of meaningful coincidences, in a spiritual sense as well. So what are the resources now with my strengths, my purpose, and now what resources are going to come to support me to do this? I can't do it on my own. I understand that, but the world is going to be out there for me to help me to get there. And when you believe in this transcendent power, or the something that's larger than yourself, that again, a benevolent being that sees you're going to be using your purpose for the, and your strengths for the service of others, as well as for yourself, predominantly for helping the world. I think that's kind of the 3 pillars that come together to make this a real compelling and empowering story for people.
Yeah, I can see that. And purpose is a tricky one for me. Finding it is like, hey, where's my purpose? Is it over there? Is it over there? No, is it here? It become we're not going to have time to talk about that, but it's a crucial question about how you find your purpose, and it has something to do with your strengths and your passions, as you've mentioned. You talk about the 3A concept. Would you care to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So doing my research in synchronicity, a lot of folks talked about, and me have observed it as well, but a lot of other people talk about patterns. And they think, well, synchronicity happens in a series of patterns, and it could be a series of 3, it could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 2. More often what our brains can kind of capture is, if you can think of 3 interlinking stories and connections that are synchronistic. So we call it I call it the 3A theory. So my belief is a synchronistic experience can happen in 3s. The first might be, the A is awareness in your brain. Okay, I've logged this away. This is an interesting concept. Interesting thing that just happened. I met this person. Interesting. Again, there's a next event that links to that first one. That's when you go into the next A, which is more of like an awakening. Okay, it's that intuitive emotional feeling, like this is something where the hairs in the back of my neck are standing up, as you've said too, Bernie, the goosebumps, right? You get this really almost this numinous, mythical, spiritual feeling. Like this is so bizarre, that's so far beyond what could be just a random coincidence. There's a meaning to this. So the second event that connects, and the third event that comes around, and it could be in a close proximity of time, it could go over time, but our memories can understand the first two. The third event is like, okay, that's it. Damn it. That this has happened 3 times now. It's telling me to do something. And that third A is the action. So it's the awareness with the head, the awakening. Again, and I like to work with, Lisa Miller's work, but the awakened brain, but the awakened heart. It's that intuitive sense that I can get this gut emotional feeling. And then the third is the action of using the hand. This is telling me to do something, and I'm gonna follow that.
Oh, that's why you had the hand in there.
Yeah. Yeah, the 3 A's, awareness, awaken, and action.
Yeah, awareness, awakening, and action.
Yeah, and head, heart, and hand. So it's kind of a way, again, for us humans to be able to encapsulate it in a way that I can understand this. Again, synchronicity is crazy. There's the huge world. At least I got 3 things that I can kind of follow.
You're so practical, Tom. I love it. I really do. I mean, it's up there in Vermont in the cold winters, you trying to be able to ski and stay warm and all the stuff you have to do. It makes you, well, you're a practical guy. I mean, skiing and then scuba diving for the reefs. You have to take care of yourself, and you have to know how to manage things. But wherever it came from, I admire and respect your practicality.
Okay. My relatives, my wife might not always think I'm practical, but yeah, I try to kind of think. And again, I think it's from being in academia for so long, how am I going to relay something that is practical for students to say, yeah, cool theory, understand the textbook. Now, how am I going to go out and apply it and use it? So it's all about that application.
Yeah, I mean, I would have said the same thing till running into you. I mean, I played football and baseball and a lot of other stuff, running around on the streets and having to be careful. I mean, it's like I've been practical, but really, and I've been a chairman of a department for 17 years, and you've done something like that too. So you got to but you got to be somewhat practical, but it's still it's this practicality with synchronicity is what I admire about you, that you're really out there trying to help people incorporate synchronicity actively into their group lives, not just individual lives, which is what I tend to focus on, but into group lives. And that's a nice and a bigger task than what I've been able to do, because the next step after that is incorporate synchronicity into world consciousness for the same idea of being able to show how we're interconnected and do the awareness awakening and do something with it thing as a species. And I'm pretty sure about what I'm saying here. It's just I'm as usual a little far out, and I'm talking with people who are very theoretical about synchronicity and more personally based, and they don't see that Jung was also talking about the worldwide need for spiritual and psychological awakening through synchronicity. They haven't gotten there yet. So even within synchronicities, researchers and thinkers, that's not there. But you're there, you're getting further out, and I think you understand that my vision, as I try to describe in the second book, has to do with developing the collective human organism and recognizing that we're part of the same mental atmosphere. And that becomes a mind of us all that we give to and take from and together can do something with.
Yeah, a collective that consciousness that goes back to, Jung's early work too.
Oh, yeah.
And I was, I mentioned earlier teaching this course called Purpose, Meaning, and Happiness. And
Yes.
and one of the texts that I used, a book called The Power of Meaning, finding fulfillment in a life, in a world obsessed with happiness is the subtitle. I love it. So with college students, and this author, Emily Esfahani Smith, writes that there are 4 pillars of kind of what is a purposeful meaning in life. And we've talked about some of them already, but the 4 pillars are, number 1 is, and these are not in any order, but a transcendence of believing, no matter who you are, that there's something in the universe more powerful than you as an individual. So having a transcendent belief. Number 2 is storytelling. What are the stories and the narratives that we tell about ourselves? I'm a failure. I'm not, I'm successful, whatever that might be. The stories we tell about ourselves and we tell about others. So it's that mindset, putting yourself into a more positive framework. I could have had a miserable life and it's been a failure all my life. I'm going to go forth saying that, or, hey, I learned from some failures. I'm moving on. Thirdly is purpose, having something that you are responsible for yourself and for others, but having a sense of purpose. And no matter how great or small that is, but having something that you can take care of and be have that to go forward. And then lastly is belonging. So going back to your comment earlier, Bernie, about this, this worldwide connectedness that we all share, but having a sense of belonging, that we are a part of a larger whole, that we belong to a community. We are cared for, and we have this connection with other people that give us real feedback about, how we are and where we are in life, and kind of relate and mirror back the value that we can have. So being in a community and having a sense that I belong to a community and I am valued. So those 4 things are really, really important. And you can think that with synchronicity and meaningful coincidences, that kind of wends its way through all of those.
They do. The definition of meaning in this Israeli paper I mentioned was having an emotional burst with a coincidence and then applying it to your life narrative. That's the way they defined meaning.
Mm.
And it's a subset of what you were just describing, of how you get. So you got a good story to tell. You begin to get some purpose. You may have a feeling of belonging when that happens, and you kind of wonder, maybe there's something else going on around here. So the meaningful coincidences contribute to the sense of meaning in life as what we're and people need it. And you've described what that looks like from a couple of different perspectives. So that's an important part of all this. And we've come to the end of our time together, Tom. And any parting words you'd like to say to our audience before we stop?
I just would like to say that it's all around us. There's these coincidences and synchronicities everywhere. And you don't have to be anyone special or a clairvoyant or a seer to know. I mean, it's all around us. So it's our opportunity to tap into that, and for the benefit of others and for yourself. So it's nothing that's elusive. It's just everywhere.
It's everywhere, and you got to pay attention to it. And I think you've said it doesn't cost anything.
That's true. And accessible 24/7, 365. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Tom Myers, thank you very much for being with me. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Bernie. Take care, and we'll hope to talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
This psychosphere is our mental atmosphere, like a hologram of cosmic consciousness.